Hello, I am intuitive medium Mary Marshall, and I am doing this video today because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, actually answer some questions. I get questions sometimes through my website, theparanormalmd.com, sometimes on the paranormal investigation side of things. I have also been doing that research and teaching paranormal studies for over a decade now. So, but today's question is, and I'm going to look at it just to get a better idea, which is, when did I decide that mediumship and the paranormal would be an important part of my life? Actually, I have had the intuitive medium abilities my whole life. For many, many years, it was kept under wraps. Handful of people, various ones through the years, would know what my experiences were. And some of them, even some of them, really not to the degree that just didn't know what was going on. So as time went on, and I'm in the paranormal field, this is obviously being an intuitive medium and going into haunted locations, I'm going to be picking things up. Although I can often separate the two sides of my brain, the investigative, more logical, analytical side, as well as the more spiritual, sometimes not so much. It just happens. So when I decided, I will tell you, first of all, I do want to say I really take it very seriously being an intuitive medium, and I think honestly that is one of the reasons that I really put off going so public with it. Is I was teaching a lot of paranormal studies from a very science perspective, on the sciences actually, and so a very logical, analytical perspective. And a lot of people that come into those classes at the colleges, they're on the fence on whether or not they even want to believe all of this, paranormal stuff. And often, it's sad to say, if at the time when I started, I would have said, oh, and by the way, I'm an intuitive medium, they would have, they'd be gone. They'd just be gone. They don't want to take it in because now you're getting into all that kind of like, metaphysical woo-woo, two-way out there stuff. So I kept it under wraps. Furthermore, I really take it as a big responsibility. It is a big responsibility. You are talking to people sometime in a very emotional state. Maybe they've gone through something very serious or even tragic. And I wanted to make sure before I went public and ever did a read that I was good. I wanted to be really good, not in an ego sense. And I say this humbly because you are taking someone else's, sometimes, I don't want to be over dramatic and say their lives, but certainly their emotions, their mental well-being into your hands. And I didn't want to be giving somebody wrong information or misleading them or, I guess, doing anything that would be hurtful. One of the reasons I got involved initially over 20 years ago now in the investigation side, research side of the paranormal was to help people. The field changed, I changed and evolved with it and became much more on the, rather than, okay, I know ghosts exist, I know it's happening. How is it happening? How is this possible in the world that we live in? And I think I always missed that wanting to be of service, be helpful, and be useful to other people's side of things as things progressed. So the mediumship side really, for me, going public with it started a few years back. I was actually at a paranormal conference. I had met a very lovely, lovely group, and so open and supportive, other supportive intuitive mediums. And I was actually interviewing them on mediumship, not saying anything about myself. They knew, but not the audience. And at the end of this, I said, okay, you could any of you just pick one person, put something out there about them, for them, whatever, inside some type of intuitive medium read way. Almost simultaneously, and this is why it was like a conspiracy, but almost simultaneously, all of them turned on me and said, no, we think you should do it. And this panic went over me, and I was like, I can't do this. I mean, all these people out here, and what if I'm wrong? And just in my head. So I said, okay, finally got to the point, and I said, and we were filming it at the time, we were doing a live feed. So I said, if we turn the cameras off, I will. So we turned the cameras off, but I got up and I went up to one particular person. I had noticed her deceased relative standing there next to her. And so we had a conversation, and I don't want to say too much, and I know it could be anybody in the world but that I'm talking about, but at the time, still very nervous and very scared. I threw some things out there that I was picking up on. One of them was, that was interesting, it was a Native American name, and I was struggling. I was trying to phonetically say it, and the person I was trying to read didn't say anything, but the person she was with said, are you trying to say? Sure enough, that's what I was trying to say, and I don't remember what it was now. But at any rate, I tended to then kind of dip a toe in and pull back out. I would get in, and I don't know, I just would retract. So I said some things, and I'm like, well, that's pretty much all I got. And I walked away. I was a smoker at the time, so I was outside having a cigarette, and this woman that I had just gave this 2-minute read to or something found me. And she asked me, she said, was this person sad for her during that person's life or after? Still very nervous about just the whole thing. I kind of looked at, I wasn't connecting with the deceased person any longer, and I'm sorry, I don't know. And it was my own fear, my own overcautiousness. I don't even know what it was, but I pulled back in my little shell. I don't know. And then I turned and I looked in her eyes, and there it all was. And I couldn't deny it. So I proceeded to say some things to her, get the validation, and by asking her questions as well, if things made sense to her. And this woman was I think she was very hesitant about the whole process herself, because she sat and she was just and her only response to things would be, when I would say, and I don't want to reveal it, but did this happen to you? And it was just an eye blink. And that was her response to everything. It was just no words, just an eye blink. This session ended with her crying, me crying, because it was very kind of tragic circumstances. And that weekend and that experience made the switch for me. to really, you know what, I think what I took the attitude of, I need to start addressing this. I need to start doing this. This is so useful and meaningful and helpful to people. I do want to back up with one other story, because that weekend was a significant change in making me delve into how to deal with my abilities in a way that would be productive and useful for other people. And this is how I describe it. That was my coming out of the closet weekend, coming out as an intuitive medium weekend. But this previous story is just as significant, because again, that was a point where really big change took place. I had a family member that was having a pretty serious surgery, and I tend to stop at chapels and churches. I think it's the peacefulness, the connectedness. I just do. And so I went in there to pray. As I'm in church praying, I noticed this woman there, and she was going from statue to, she had her coat on, and I could just see her back, and she was going from statue to statue, I'm assuming praying. And at one point I hear that and sniffles, and I'm like, oh gosh, what's going on? This poor lady, I could tell she was crying. And then it happened. I honestly, in that moment, as dramatic as this is going to sound, it felt like God himself. I mean, this came, and here I'm in the chapel. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm praying. There's crosses, and God's there, and you know, I had stayed away from this for so much of my life due to religious beliefs, mostly other people's religious beliefs, that somehow being an intuitive medium was wrong, which it is not. But so this woman is there, and she's crying, and then all of a sudden this just came to me, and I had something to say to her. I was told what to say. In my head, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't walk up to some stranger I don't even know, and she's in a fragile state, and she's you know, I could tell she's upset. She was upset, and she was crying, and but I did, because I felt like, to be honest, at the time, not quite understanding how this is all working, but I felt at the time that if I did not do this, I felt like I was telling God himself no. And so I did. And she came towards the back near to the door, and so I got up from my seat, and I walked up to her. I said, excuse me. I said, I'm sorry. I know you don't know me, but sometimes God works through other people. And I just need to tell you that it's going to be okay. You're going to make it. Now, I don't know what this means. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't applying it to the fact if she had been sick, or had no clue, you know, what exactly this message meant in reference. But I knew it was important for her to hear it. Upon me finishing the last words of that, and this is so funny, because this still, every single time, and I've told this story many times on radio interviews, it makes me emotional, because it was such a breakthrough moment for me. But the connectedness to her, to the soul, to spirit, to love. So upon hearing the last words of, it's okay, you're going to make it, she looks at me, and tears just are pouring down her face. And she says to me, through a very heavy Polish accent, and also she was wearing an hospital orderly uniform under her coat, that I could now see. And she said, She says, I can't, and she's stuttering, but she's like, my mom is in Poland and she's dying. And she had been praying, please God, let me make it before she dies. So the message was in fact for her. The message, in recollection, because I didn't know any better at the time, might have been for my spirit guides, but somehow that day I still felt like it was from God himself. He answered her prayer through me. What an honor. To be able to do that for another person. And it was all so good and so in such a holy place. That's the day that I decided, you can't tell me this is wrong. You can't tell me that being a psychic medium is wrong and somehow ungodly or against the universe, the nature of the universe, or whatever else. That was healing. She needed to hear that. That helped her. So that day was pretty significant to me, as you could probably just tell, in changing my mind and starting to open up the path before me and becoming and working for others as an intuitive medium. So, those two stories, one many years ago and one just a few years ago, were two significant changes that brought me to where I am now. Now I do work as an intuitive medium. I do work to help others, and I do offer intuitive medium reads over the internet, because there's a ton of people out there I can't physically get to, nor can they physically get to me. So that is how, I guess, the story of how Mary made some decisions, or Mary became an intuitive medium. So I guess at this point is where I've got to say, if you'd like an intuitive medium read, you can look me up and find out a lot of information at theparanormalmd.com. There is an entire page that is just regarding the intuitive mediumness. There's other things on there as well, obviously dealing with the paranormal. But again, if you are interested, please contact me at theparanormalmd.com. You can book an appointment right through there, and I will be very happy to meet you and to be of service.